Hey, y'all. Tommy here at Storage Pug. Welcome to another amazing episode of Gabfocus. We got two of the industry's top veterans in this show today. Y'all are in for a treat. But first off, Melissa, how in the world are you?
Fantastic.
Have been globetrotting a little bit.
And it's just started. So I am pumped and ready to go for a full fall trade show season. So y'all will see me in all sorts of places. So it's exciting. Good stuff.
Well, welcome back to all of our Gabfocus fans to another incredible episode. If this is your first time to Gabfocus, you're in for a treat. We've got two of the best that self-storage has to offer. Today's session is all about maximizing your team, how to grow, how to train, how to hire, how to do all the things to make sure that the team around you is taking care of the property and make sure everyone is taken care of. So let's introduce our speakers. First here on my left, Sue Haviland, the one and only. Sue, how is California today?
It's a little drier today. So for anybody that wasn't listening earlier, Stormwatch 2023 wasn't quite as bad as it looked like on the news, but we did get pummeled pretty hard with rains and some winds in some areas, way worse than others, but we're all good.
We're glad you're here and we're glad you're safe. So Sue's got 35 years of storage experience, which is a little mind-blowing. I'm trying to wrap my mind around that, right? But starting off as a store manager at Extra Space, and the last, 15, 20 years, you've been training other people and helping other people run their storage businesses. Tell us about that a little bit. That's really a crazy story.
Well, I truly am, there's a few of us that joke, I'm truly a storage nerd. I had a brief moment way back when I thought I'm going to go do something else. And I thought, well, why would I do that? I love this. So I love that my roots started as a store manager, because I think that's part of what has helped me be able to grow my business and also just work with my teams. I understand what they face every day. And, I think that's an important part of for those of us that still have site managers and site teams, that we know what their day is like. And I've wore a lot of hats. I've storage manager, area manager, regional vice president of operations, up to owning my own management company. And part of why I started that was I was just seeing that there was a need at that time, so several years ago, as a lot of the now really large companies were growing and consolidating back then, that there was a need still for the mid-sized to smaller operator who could have somebody with my experience to go in and either help them all the time or just help them a couple times a year, or with various aspects, auditing, training, and such. So I've been able to keep doing the things I'm passionate about at the site level versus having to wear a suit and only go to meetings.
How magical is
both
that?
worlds.
Right. Yeah. You get to show up and hang out with the man. I'm thinking about the managers that you've gotten to work with over the last few years, and so much wealth of knowledge that you have. But Sue, thank you for coming to this show and educating our crowd today. Your speaker today, pretty cool guy himself, Terrie Campbell. Welcome to the stage. Welcome back to the stage, I should say. Terrie was part of the OG crowd from the very original Gabfest. So Terrie, welcome back. How in the world are you?
Man, if I were any better, I'd be Sue Haviland. I appreciate you having me back. It was cool being, like I said, I was thinking about that yesterday, that I didn't realize that was actually the first one. So, being part of the first, part of the OGs is cool.
It is cool.
Like one of the cool kids.
So 28 years in the storage business. So that's pretty crazy. Nowadays, you're running Copper Storage Management as their CEO. Talk to us a little bit about your journey and what is it that you do these days as the CEO of Copper?
Sure. Well, I started the industry, as I told you a minute ago. I can tell you the day, January 3rd, 1995. It was my first day at Betco, self-storage building manufacturer over in Statesville, North Carolina. And when I started, I was a drafter and an estimator, and I grew up there in the industry. I was there just a little over 20 years, and I was, like I said, drafter, estimator, and worked my way through the company, sales. Eventually, I was director of sales and marketing and executive VP of operations. And I left Betco to go to Live Oak Bank down in Wilmington, North Carolina, to start their self-storage lending team. And it was from the ground up. And that was quite an experience. It was a great experience. For one thing, I got to live at the beach, but that's cool for a while, but it's not cool forever. And when I left there, well, I was there a little over 7 years. And Bob Copper and I have known each other for years, and we got to be friends several years ago. And I started investing with them there back in 2019 and started building a portfolio. And they asked me if I would, come on board and really make the management part a legitimate company and grow it to, where it could go. And so I left the bank. We had just crossed the $1 billion mark at Live Oak, just self-storage loans in 7 years. Extremely proud of that. Extremely proud of the team.
Could be. That's incredible.
That did that. It was a lot of hard work, but man, it grew out to be a really, really good part of the bank, and they're still doing fantastic. And came on board as a CEO and partner here in Copper Storage Management, and I've been here about 16 months now, I think, and we made a lot of changes. We're doing a lot of stuff. I think when I came on board, we had about 80 facilities, and now we're very close to 180 facilities. So we've grown really, really fast. And, as you know, when you grow fast, you get growing pains. It's not cheap to grow that fast either. So we've done great. And the team here, extremely proud of the team. Everybody worked so hard.
Well, I know Melissa and I are stoked to pull from your wells of experience here.
Yeah.
I mean, and incredible, because we all know, like, the team, they're like the backbone of operations, right? Like, without your team, there's really not there's nothing to support the actual business, all right, to have a healthy, thriving storage business. So y'all, we're stoked to have both of you here. Again, if you are brand new to Gabfocus, welcome. You picked a really good show to start your journey with us. Gabfocus brought to you by our two teams, Storage Pug here in Knoxville and Lighthouse Storage Solutions over in the Chattanooga area here in East Tennessee. The session set up real simple. We're going to go for about an hour. Melissa and I will ask all the questions, and our guests will answer everything. Today's agenda, real simple. Let's start with hiring top talent. How do we go about doing that? Let's talk about training that talent once you've hired them. And then, of course, keeping them happy and retaining them. Talking about solving conflict. We'll do a live Q&A. And of course, we have a question of the week. And speaking of a live Q&A, there is a Q&A tool in your Zoom app. Submit all your questions there. Melissa and I will keep an eye on all the questions that y'all submit. And we actually won't even have to wait for the end to ask your questions. We'll just kind of ask them throughout the show if they're relevant. So without further ado, intros out of the way, let's jump right on in. Melissa, you want to get us started?
Hey, can I make one comment to just
sure.
before we jump? It's relevant to all of this. So Tommy, you talked about how our teams are the backbone, and Terrie, you've probably seen this. I still, with as much as I go out, whether it's for training or auditing, if you have a home office, a corporate office, so often there's that disconnect between the on-site teams and the corporate office. And I think it's imperative that your corporate office has, everybody who works in a corporate office has visited a property, has been out to it. That really helps with that disconnect. So you don't always have a we and a they. And so it just really helps build on that team part too. That was one of the things in the early days at Extra Space, when I'd go out in the field, I'd hear how, whether accounting people or various other departments would talk to the team, and I would sometimes overhear it. And so I just, would ask her, do a little self-check on your operation to see how your field team feels about your office team and vice versa, and how they treat each other.
That's cool. I mean, because we all should be like working towards the same thing, right? Not inadvertently or advertently, bumping heads or working against each other. So thank you for that. I mean, that's a great way to start this thing.
Yeah, it absolutely
Talk about
is.
hiring the people who can contribute to that kind of culture at your operations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because if you don't have that cohesiveness, you're going to have problems. And with your people that are, facing your customers, they need to feel like they're a part of that team. the theys that are in the big offices wearing the suits. So first thing we want to talk about is hiring the top talent. And I'm sure you guys have hired a ton of people between the two of you. So I know that you can give great feedback on this. Let's talk about traits. What kind of traits do you look for in a new employee? And what kind of questions are you asking in the interview to find those traits and to identify them?
Well, I was just going to make a joke. That's probably changed a little bit in today's environment. Before, when I started, we looked for a warm body that would keep the store open. Then we started looking for salespeople. Now I'm happy if somebody shows up for their interview.
So true.
And dressed appropriately. So.
One of the things about the traits is there's pluses and minuses to having remote teams. We're remote management. And not only are we remote management, we are remote, all of us in the management company. So there's two ways of looking at that. One is that you don't have all the camaraderie, you don't have the ability to walk in somebody's office and talk about things and stuff like that. It's a drawback. But at the same time, you have the ability, because you're not limited geographically, you can get people from anywhere in the country that have the traits you're looking for. You can actually build a stronger team in some cases, unless you want to actually get somebody to move to wherever you're at if you have a brick and mortar place. But and I'll go into your question about, some of the traits. I used to look at, there were two things I looked at: attitude and aptitude. Do they have the attitude to do what it takes to be, a part of the team, no ego, things like that, and the aptitude to learn? Because at one point I was always hung up on, they got to have experience in this or that. They got to have experience. And I learned after a while that is not necessarily a good thing. Sometimes you've got to untrain them from what, bad habits they may have had. So it used to be attitude and aptitude, and I still abide by those two things. If they can be taught, they've got a great attitude. But now something that we've added is they've got to fit your core values as a company. That's something that I don't know if you guys have ever heard of EOS. It's called the Entrepreneurial Operating System. If not, I recommend you read the book Traction. It is a fantastic book. It's a platform that helps everybody row in the same direction with communication and things like that. But we incorporate that. You got to meet our core values, because if you don't, you're not going to last. So we interview, hire, review, and fire based on core values as much as anything anymore. Those are some of the things that they're very important to us. But problem solving, conflict resolution, things like that, that's all great. But there's a lot of skills that can be taught, but some things cannot, like your core values.
And I would say, for those of us that still have in-person staff at the properties, I've always said, probably any webinar you've ever heard me on, hire slow, fire fast. So it's hard though sometimes when you've had a site without the right person in a position for weeks, or if you're covering it, and sometimes it's hard. I know I've in the past settled on the okay candidate versus waiting for the right candidate. And as the pickings have been slimmer over the last couple of years, like I'm seeing in some of my markets, if I run an ad, I can have 40 good resumes. And if I get 2 of those people to actually respond back and show up, or I get a lot of people, and it's always good when you have a hard decision to make. But I'd say I agree with everything Terrie's saying. And I'm like, in my interview style, I'm a little more, I would say, casual, because I feel they're already nervous. If they're in an interview process, you would hope at some semblance, because they're nervous because they want the job, they want to do well. But if they can't have a good eye-to-eye conversation with me, how are they going to have them with my customers and show that detail of attention? And for me, if the only question they can ask me is what's the pay, because the range is always listed in the ads. So if that's their only question, they haven't even bothered to look up our website or anything, then I don't usually feel like they're going to fit our core values either, because they didn't think enough to learn a little bit about us while we're now trying to learn about them. And so I've, found that having that more casual, I ask all the, appropriate questions in a roundabout way in that, but I have found, and, especially depending on the age of your candidate, to see how they can have a good eye-to-eye conversation.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the trait of being able to have a conversation with someone, that's a big part of the manager's role, right? Especially for on-site managers who are interacting with customers or potential customers on a day-to-day basis, right? So that's kind of neat. So you mentioned something about like job posting, and you get, maybe sometimes you get a bunch of resumes and they don't respond, but like, have y'all found any secret sauce in like the most successful places to source new talent for storage facilities?
Well, we like to get personal referrals. We have enough depth in our bench that has been in the industry a long time. A lot of our hires have come from personal referrals, that people that they've worked with. But we have actually LinkedIn we've gotten some good ones from LinkedIn, and Indeed. We tend to use that. So those are probably our three biggest ones that we've been able to find good people with.
And I find it cycles sometimes. So one avenue where you have a really good round of getting applicants, then the next time you have something, you're like, what happened? And why is there hardly anybody here? So I think it's just get it out on every avenue you can. And anytime you can get a referral, or, that's one of the things with the number of years I've had, I've built up. Sometimes I'll have managers of mine that have come and gone and retired or moved on. They either want to come back, or now they know somebody and they refer them. So I've been fortunate with a lot of that. Or I've got one gentleman in particular, he will follow me everywhere I go. If I terminate or lose a property sold where he works, he will wait until I have another one and leave where he's at to come with me. So, that makes me feel good that he feels I've treated him right and put him in a good position all these years to follow me. So.
For a minute, I thought you were talking about Craig.
He doesn't have a choice.
Now.
Of course he's going to follow her.
Yeah.
All right. So in this interview process, what are the biggest red flags that you see of potential employees? And then also on the flip side of that, what are some green flags that you're like, yes, this is a good one?
Red flag. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Terrie.
Okay. Well,
I was just say red flag. You go.
Ladies first.
Sue, you go. Sue, you go.
Well, I've already mentioned one, when all they can ask about is the pay. And then also looking at the resume itself, if they have hopped a lot, that's always a red flag for me. Why do they only stay somewhere 6 months, 9 months, a year? Why is there a big gap possibly? Now, we all know maybe you've taken care of, an elderly parent or had a thing happen in your life. There's those kinds of things. But, especially when you see they've hopped from facility to facility, that's a red flag for me. And then also, if they weren't on time or a little early for their in-person interview, and if they right away come in with what they need versus learning about the job and getting through the process before they've looked at an ad that tells the requirements, and they come in and say, well, I won't work these days, or I'll need this. So that always is kind of like, I guess, you don't fit. I'm not going to hire the person to fit them. They need to fit what the business needs. So,
I can't add a whole lot to that. Punctuality was my first one as well. I'm not punctuality, but lots of job hopping. Punctuality, not showing up on time, that's a big deal. Not dressing appropriately for an interview. There's still some. I know that things have gotten much more relaxed over the last several years, and with myself included. But there's still some protocol there whenever you're interviewing and trying to make a good impression. And I think as far as green flags, if the conversation flows naturally, if it's just a good conversation, and maybe they're able to give you some examples of things that they've done that would apply to what they would be doing for you, or how they've overcome some obstacles that might fit the role that they're applying for.
Other green flags for me are part of our interview process. Is we always take the person out on the property, because again, like Terrie, I don't always want somebody who's had the experience, because I don't want to retrain somebody else's bad training or the baggage they had from being a disgruntled employee somewhere else. So especially when you have somebody who's never been to storage or had storage themselves, hard to believe that happens nowadays, but sometimes they've never had a storage unit, take them, show them around. If they stop and pick up a piece of trash, the things they can point out to you, if they're that observant when they're walking around and that mindful of it, that's a good sign to me as well about their personality and what they could bring to the table.
I love doing the walk around the property because especially if it's a hot day or if it's a rainy day and they immediately are complaining about the weather, it's like you're going to have a problem doing a daily walk around because, a third of the days of the year, you're going to have 80-degree weather and it's going to be hot and sweaty. And are you not going to want to go out on those days because you're a little uncomfortable? Probably not going to be a good fit for this job. So actually having that kind of hands-on approach to an interview, I really like that.
That's cool. Did you, Melissa, when you were in the thick of hiring a bunch of people, did you have any green flags, or was anything like, oh yeah, she's the one, this is the one?
Really a lot of what Sue said there at the end is like, how engaged are they when they show up to an interview is what you're really looking for. On a red flag, I did have a guy start off the interview one time asking me how much downtime he could count on having.
Ah, nice.
So,
All the downtown because you're not working here.
Exactly. Wrap that one up pretty quick.
One other thing I do with our final candidates is we'll give them one of our competitors to go shop and then ask them to tell us what they think of them and see what they notice, and that they go do it. If they put it off, don't do it, that can pull them right out of the, that's one more thing that takes a little effort to see how serious they are about putting the time in for the job. And then I get a nice little shop with my competitor. And then I also see if this is my new manager or storage consultant, what they notice about their competitor.
Really good idea. I like that.
Yeah, that's a new one for me. So let's say you found the right person. They're amazing. All the green flags, no red flags. They meet the core values. Like everything is top notch. So let's talk about training this person so that we can give them, set them up for success. So let's start with do y'all even have a training program? If you do, do you use software? Talk to us about what training looks like.
Oh no, we're in the storage industry, Tommy. We just throw them in and they got to figure it out.
To the wolves, right? I mean, all you do, you answer the phone, you play solitaire, you get on Facebook, right? That's
Here you go. Here's your key. Figure it out.
So talk to us. What is a training program? What should it look like for successful self-storage managers?
I'll tell you the way we do it, and obviously there's a difference because we have the manned facilities and then what we do. So you've got different roles and different things. So with us, our training is done. It's almost like a ride along training. They're trained with the person who's going to be their supervisor or their peer that's doing the same job. They're trained on the software, live as you're going, and then, till they get proficient at it. So there's a lot of that we do. And we have, as far as, the actual training for the job, that's the way it's typically done. But we also have other types of training we do we have a PEO that has a lot of online courses that we provide and actually require on certain things, such as, internet security and not clicking the wrong thing on emails and stuff like that. So that's sort of a process for us in the way that the world we live in.
As far as for us, this is something I'll say every time we do a session like this too, is the most important thing is that you have some kind of training. And there's a lot of places you don't have the setup to have an on-site trainer or somebody that goes around. But key one, make sure the right person is doing your training, because often just because you might say you had 2 stores and your site manager at the one store is the best manager that's ever walked, doesn't mean they can train. Being able to do your own job well doesn't always mean you can equate it into training somebody else and how they learn things and that. But, if that's what you have, then, making sure they have the tools in place. So, and there's no right or wrong answer, I believe, to how many days or that, but you have to look at your own resources. But gosh, make sure you have some. You don't have to keep up with the big companies that have all the online courses and all that. to be able to have a successful program. It can start with you're small in one store and you don't have a lot of staff to, just even daily training checklists of things they go through, and if they need to go through it again. And, we try not to let anybody at our stores be on the front counters for the first 5 days.
That's cool.
For sure. And mainly it's because I want them to learn and have practice what the sizes are, what goes in them, comfortable answering the phone. And then, they mirror somebody, they go through our checklists, our different, videos, materials, and then they get to start doing it themselves. We utilize our software demos. I have homework for our demo. So they do homework on our software, doing rentals, vacates, all that kind of stuff. So they've had a lot of practice with that before they're shoved. But, occasionally, sometimes you do got to shove them to the wolves too. So, and that just happens. And, for some people, that's fine. That's the best way they learn too. So, just, trying to have something in place so they don't show up, the first day is the best impression you're going to make on that person of what their job is going to be like, I feel. So if they get there and they're ignored for the first couple of hours, there's no direction, they're just kind of sitting in a back office, not sure what to do, those kind of things. So have a plan, even if you can't be with them to start, then have them do their sexual harassment training class, have them go through different materials, give them something to do that they're focusing on, and be checking in on them until you can give them the undivided attention. But at a minimum, do those checklists and go through, because different operators, what they think is important on day one is different to the next operator, what you teach first and foremost. But for me, it's like first and foremost is that they sell units.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned too that it's really is different for every employee. Some people catch on super fast, and then others it may take 2 weeks before they're comfortable with solo answering the phone and doing all the multitasking that needs to happen. So being able to be a little flexible with that is really important. And honestly, beyond teaching them how to actually run the software and, a couple of directions on answering the phones and answering those basic questions, a lot of it in this industry is based on what walks in the door, because all of our customers bring in different things that we have to, and you can't train for every scenario that your customer is going to present. So a lot of it is on the job training. And so having that constant availability of someone that they can go to as a resource is super helpful. And their training will actually and should actually continue for months and even years. So
and another thing on the employee handbook aspect, employee handbook is, the rules and things of being an employee versus a policy and procedure manual, or the many other names people may call those. But a lot of people don't realize if you use a payroll company and you don't have an employee handbook, you better get one. And especially if you're in California, and they often have it all in there, and you just have to put certain aspects in. And then if they're punching in on any kind of automated system, everything's electronic. So you always have their signatures and everything. And like, unlike the old days when we did any changes to it, we had a paper, they had to sign it, you had to make sure you got it back. And now you can just, and in California, I feel like every few months, something's changing with our little side manual about COVID, even still, if you can believe it, and things like that. So it's an automatic boom, I approve it, set it for each site, and it goes off to them and it's done, versus being so daunting that you don't do it because it seems like it's going to take you forever to do and it's not your wheelhouse. So check if you use a payroll company, they might already have something for you.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I think something you said there is like, if you're a small independent operator and you've got one or a handful of stores, like, you don't have to reach and get all techie, right? Like, you don't have to do what maybe the REITs are doing with all their electronic training and all the videos. Like, you can start small with like checklists, role playing, right? Like, just practice with your new trainee. Like, hey, let's pretend like I'm a customer. I'm going to give you a few scenarios. Let's see how you handle it, right? I think, Melissa, you said something too that is so true. Every customer brings in their own little bit of baggage, right? So I think like the best managers have a really strong problem-solving framework, whether it's a technical framework or just like they just know how to deal with it. that's really the thing you want to instill in your really awesome managers. It's like, you can't account for every scenario, but given something given an unknown, you know how to process it and you know how to deal with it, right? To me, that's huge. I mean, I think that's similar to like the team here at Storage Bug. Like, every situation might be a little bit different, and I think it's important. It's less important to know how to deal with every scenario, and more so, hey, when an unknown happens, how do we cope? You know. So love these answers. So talk to me about continuous education. So there's like, what do y'all do when it comes to like retraining or continuing education for your new recruits?
Well, for us, for our management company, it is just a constant training and updating on the things we have in place. Each quarter, at a minimum, we make sure that the SOP is updated so that we have any procedures that have changed at all are up to date. And when you do that, it's always stay in front of mind too. So those are some of the things we do. And one of the again, I already mentioned that our payroll company, our PEO, and Sue just mentioned it too, is they will quite often, they'll have things that you can use, videos you can watch, training you can have, that can be on so many different subjects that can be helpful to the team. It may be something specific to them, maybe something specific that they're dealing with on their own, but things in that nature is what we do.
That's awesome.
Cool.
Okay.
I saw
along the same lines.
Sorry, go ahead, Sue.
I just say along the same lines, like Terry was saying, I will have my team sign up for Gabfocus. I will have them sign up for one of Carol's webinar. They don't have to only hear from me. Plus, they'd rather not, probably. Let's be honest. They get tired of me. So I like to find other things, hear somebody else. And even if it's saying the same things I would say, it's amazing. Carol and I have laughed about this in the past. Well, can you tell my team this? Because I've said it 40 times and you said it once, they heard it and they're like, oh, that's a good idea. So I think it's important.
From other people.
Yeah, there's so many free options to let them see other sources, read the magazines, even non-storage type of, webinars and articles. I'll shoot them a little article or something and ask them their thoughts on it. And sometimes I'll throw in the first 3 people to send me what they think of this video or article get lunch, so I keep it fun and engaging so that they won't push it off till the end of the week, that they'll find the time to do it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Diane just commented back, mother deaf. They hear like little kids. Like if mom keeps saying it, they're just going to ignore it. But somebody else says it and it's like, oh, that's great. That's so very true though. So with your training process, Tommy mentioned like role playing earlier. Do you guys do sales scripts? And what kind of scripts do you use? Is it just phone or is it for in-person too? And how do you encourage the employees to use those?
Well, we do. And again, you got 2 separate management styles. You got a person on site that handles things a certain way. And with ours, our manager we call him operations manager, but it's within the call center. And that person, may talk to 25 to 40 people a day instead of just a couple a day. So we have to have automated workflows. We do have to have a script. We don't want them varying from that. So we try to automate it and provide scripts and things like that, just because it's a different natured role than what the traditional manager role is. So yes, we absolutely do. And it's critical for us.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's both. And sometimes it's variant on the staff. Ironically, some of I split my time between California and South Carolina now. So I had surgery, couldn't be out at my sites for the last 3 months. So coming out of COVID and then me not being as present, I started to notice when I'd listen to some of my calls, we're getting a little lazy, we're a little complacent. Somebody who normally had always done really well. I'm like, yep, they need a script again because they're forgetting how to do a proper call. And, I just recently had Carol's in the middle of shopping some of my sites. So, it's important. And we, have to look outside ourselves sometimes and see that, we can get complacent or lazy. And, when you were so full during COVID and now some areas are a little slower, my focus has been back to, even with my old time people, sales training again, because a lot of times they don't even realize how their script or sales presentation is going at this point. They're just like, I don't know, it's like it went out of their brains when they used to do it so well. So it's an ongoing, you've got to constantly be reiterating that and focusing on it and practicing it and showing them and rewarding when it's good, because when they keep doing it well, your occupancy show it, and when they don't, that also shows. So
yeah, no, that's a killer point, is the continuous retraining and continuously just having a little bit of accountability checks, and I put you mentioned Carol, and it's Carol Mixon for the audience who's not familiar with Carol. I'll put a link to her website. She does really cool mystery shopping and auditing services. Check it out. If you have a manager, or if you yourself as a manager and would love some tips, Carol is a wealth of knowledge and resource on that. So check out her website. To the point of like training and keeping things up, like how often should team members, like managers, be following up on leads, right? Sue, you mentioned earlier, like at one point it was just a warm body, right? But then the role kind of evolved into it's a little bit of a sales role as well. But like, what's the cadence and how often should people be following up on leads?
Immediately. Because if you don't, somebody else is gonna, because there's chances they've been on your website and somebody else's. And nowadays, all the softwares we use or our call centers, there's no reason you don't know about it right away if you weren't the one to take that lead. So, your call centers are responding for you and then emailing you or texting you or something so you can follow up. You can automate follow-up emails, you can automate follow-up texts. So there's short of you were, locked in the bathroom for a half hour or out on your property because you were alone, then that's the first thing you should be checking when you come back inside, if you're not taking a phone outside with you. So if you don't do it right away, if you can't wait hours, you can't wait till the next day, or somebody else is going to grab that lead from you.
So in addition to that immediate follow-up, are there any other tips that you give your employees to actually help convert those leads?
Incentives, motivation, reinforcement, daily goals.
Suddenly they become a salesperson with the incentive, huh?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Well, making your numbers to get your bonus is a big motivator. But I think that goes back as well to having the right people. If you find that you have somebody that it just always seems to never, if following up on leads and closing rentals and that are always lagging, then you probably don't have the right team. Either we've failed on our training, we've failed on giving them the support and tools they need, or it's just the wrong person. So, that's why I say sometimes you gotta you like the person, they're nice, but if the best part of their job isn't being able to rent units, it's time maybe, or the person in the lead is not the strong one and the secondary person is your strong person. I see that a lot too. So
they're in the wrong seat.
Yeah. I think that's
you got the great soldier, but you don't have the leader in the right chair.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so Terrie, I mean, you brought something there about perks and benefits and compensating, good people well. So let's talk about employee retention, right? How do you keep those amazing people who, and using our metaphor there, like they are on the right seat? What are the perks that you offer your employees? Talk to us about benefits, pay, commissions, or any other kinds of programs that that you all have seen that works well, and maybe Terrie, some of the things that you all currently do at Copper.
Well, like you said, starting off, it's got to be the right person. It's got to be the right person with the right values and the right seat, and that want to be part of the organization, because then they're going to want to do what it takes to get it done. But of course, you have to take care of them. We make sure that our pay scale is in line with what it is. We try to afford as much flexibility, especially being remote, that we can. Being a younger company, one of the things that is on, if you can see my board over here, I see it every single day, and I have since last fall, is setting up incentive programs and bonus programs within the company based on the role, and not just based on the company's profitability, because that can be a little unfair. So I want to try to set up bonus programs and incentive programs that are directly related to their role and how they affect profitability and growth for the company. So, those are some of the things. We offer vacation, we offer health insurance, and things like that, 401k and dental, and we offer the sort of the standard package. But that's something, the incentives and bonuses is something that'll be coming down the road as we continue to grow more profitable. Again, being the age and size that we are, we're still growing into that, and as that happens, we're going to share the bounty.
And for me, a little different approach, because a lot of the people that I manage, they're single store owners, so they don't have the numbers to do the health insurance. A lot of things has changed in the last couple of years. I tried to do a group one, and a lot of the places that used to do the group ones now don't. They all have to be individual. So then the premiums go up so much higher. Then, I have owners that'll say, well, I'll offer so much money towards health, but they have to get health insurance, but I can't make them. So I have to get creative sometimes in the things. We have sick pay, vacation pay, bonus. All my staff are included in the bonus program, not just the managers or the storage company, my maintenance crew, because if the maintenance guys or janitorial guys don't keep the properties up, then our product doesn't look good to sell. So they deserve a piece just as much. It's a quarterly, goes into a pool. On top of that, because it's little things that it's funny sometimes when you're trying to ask for money for your property. So they get a birthday check for their birthday to go do I have a quarterly treat yourself. They can take money out of petty cash. The only rule is for the dollar amount, they got to send me a receipt, and they got to send me a photo either at what they applied it to, using it or something. And it can't be used for a bill, gas. It has to be something they treat themselves that they wouldn't normally do, because they wouldn't have the money. I do manager meetings. I'm getting ready for, I've got the Strong Alone, Unstoppable Together. I'm a nacho average employee. I've got bags, and I'm getting ready. They'll have gift cards. I buy birthday lunches. I send out birthday photos to all the teams of everybody. Doesn't take me that much time, because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm too busy. I'm like, you know what? You put them on your calendar, you have photos of all your staff, you send them out to everybody, and then everybody else within that group sends them a happy birthday, and they're remembered. And that costs me nothing.
That's lovely.
So, and it just feeds to, how you treat them. So when I don't have the big health insurances or 401ks, I just try to get creative to show how much I appreciate them for their hard work, and always striving to have the best pay per hour in the area. A good bonus. If they grow the revenue, their bonus grows. And again, at the end of the day, just how you treat them.
I absolutely love that. And it doesn't matter how old we get. We all want to be acknowledged on our birthday. I mean, let's just admit it. It's the truth. No, I think that's great. I think it goes a long way to actually show appreciation for the person further than just their paycheck, because not everybody is paycheck driven either. Some people just want to be acknowledged and want to be appreciated. And so little things like that go a really long way. So I love that you do that. I think that's fantastic. So
can I just add one more point? I'm sorry. I think a lot of mistakes operators make with their bonus programs, when, to your point about not everybody's cash driven, giving somebody $10 for a move-in isn't always going to drive them to do that move-in. Or if you're giving money and they have discounts, you're discounting and paying them when you've already set it up to give them a discount to rent the space. So, look at what you might be doing as a program and see, and be wise enough to know that's not really driving the end result you want for your occupancy or revenue numbers. versus just automatically giving something to somebody that, something else would, maybe, a trip or, dinner
Maybe.
or
Right.
plaques. I mean, I had somebody years ago, I tried everything with, and when I finally started little manager award plaques, that was their goal. They wanted to win them every time.
They wanted a trophy. That's awesome.
I know. I know everybody laughs and goes, no, money, money, money. But there truly are some people, if they're living a lifestyle that they can afford and gets them what they need, and it's not all about, or I'm really try to be involved too. What's important to my staff as far as the community, where we get involved with our charity storage units. They pick their charities, so I'm not picking them. They get to pick them, try to drive who they want to help in the community if we're allowed to give free units, or I have a couple sites, I get a dollar amount from the owner every year. And so the staff can go do things in the community. And that's really important to some of them, more than $100 or $200 bonus to be involved in somebody they like to help.
So it's really about getting to know your employees. So, and what really, what affects them and what they are working for. So how do you get that kind of feedback from your employees? Do you just straight up ask them? What's more important to you? Do you have surveys? How do you go about getting that information, or is it just time and just learning the person naturally?
Well, for me, I think it's time and learning. I used to do a little survey, and it's part of my new hire packet, asking them things like simple things like their favorite soda, their favorite ice cream, their favorite sports teams. And so that has always been very helpful to get to know them a little bit. And then when I want to walk into the store, sometimes I walk in with a case of their soda, I get them ice cream certificates, or I get, if I do secret Santas with a couple of sites where they throw my name in, and then whoever I get, I can look at their sheet and I know if they like, the Lakers, then I'll get them a Lakers t-shirt as my secret, those, and they forget that, that, and it's also just making the time still, especially now that I'm splitting time, making time. And, I even find myself sometimes when you're getting caught up on other projects, or if I'm out on other clients or big audits, I have to pull myself back in and remember I need to check on my team. It's been a few days, and, they're used to that. And I know we don't all have time to do that or whatever. It depends on your size and your role. But if you have the time and you say, I'm going to devote 30 minutes a week to enriching my team, how can I do that?
That's awesome. I love all those ideas.
We've done something similar as far as sending out a sheet to all the employees, and we do it with the new ones that come in, asking a lot of these questions to get to know them a little better as well. And you said something, what's your favorite, something we asked, what's your favorite candy? And we actually had an in-person meeting this spring with some of us, and I found out one of them loves Andy's mints, as I do. So I brought some with me and, gave them to him when we met. Again, having the challenge of all of us being remote, we're currently working on trying to do like a remote group after hour sort of thing, just to get, to know each other better. And maybe some of them in person, because some areas of the country, there are some folks that are concentrated close to each other. So we're trying to foster, a little more of that. And, and within the team itself, we've started doing, and we're making it quarterly, doing town hall meetings, just to be able to communicate and ask questions, up front, so we can all communicate on that call.
That's so cool.
That's neat. So moving on. So you've got cool employees, you're doing all the things, you're training, you're taking care of them, you're getting to know them, giving them candy, all the things, right? So how do you go about evaluating performance? Like, how do you know if someone is truly doing an awesome job? I think, so you touched on this a little bit, so maybe we can start with you about, bonusing the right things, but like, how do you go about evaluating performance?
We do annual reviews, and my reviews are not tied to raises. They're given at separate times. Also, by the time I go in to give somebody their performance review, if they have an area they've been slacking in, it's not a surprise to them. If you wait until the annual review to tell somebody they're not doing something appropriately or well enough, then you're not doing your job. So they should never be shocked at their reviews, is my opinion. But, I think just a simple thing through my time clock system, or my area manager, I know if somebody's got a punctuality problem. So, you address things, based on how you find them, or because sometimes, the manager might not, they love their storage consultant. They might not say, they've come in 15 minutes late the last 3 days, and they don't say anything to us because they don't want them to get in trouble because they love them and they are a good worker. But we go to do payroll, we see it. So you can address things timely. Numbers don't lie. So condition of the property when you show up, it shouldn't matter. And I say this short of having hurricane weather, shouldn't matter when you go to your property, what it looks like. It shouldn't matter if I'm coming, I have Josh coming to do photos, the owner's going to show up. It should always look great for our customers, not get cleaned for me coming. And so, if I show up and, people have laughed, they know over the years, I used to plant trash when I knew I was going to be back to back at properties. And if I saw things, I saw a cup out there, I've always, put hi, Sue was here 8/24. And if I go back 3 days later and it's still out there, then I take a picture, I take it in, we go walk it. It's a good learning experience. I hate knowing that it sat there for 3 days, but it's one of the most effective learning tools for maintenance on a property. And when I go out with my team and we go out and we walk the properties, I always have my camera, we always take pictures, we talk about it, and then I follow up, with an email with the photos, and this is what we talked about today, and here's the things. And so it helps. The photos are a really good visual reminder as well. And when you are on your own property, managers, I get it. I go to a property and I see, oh wow, look at this, and they're like, what? Because they're focused on what they want to look at and show me. And when you drive by and see the same things every day, you might not notice that the paint's a little faded here, or this has a dent in it, or certain things like that. So being able to do those performance reviews, you have to have visited your properties and you have to have spent time with your staff, and again, pay attention, ultimately your numbers, and and also if you've got an area and you can't ever keep staff, why? So do you have a manager that chases out their storage consultants or their relief people all the time? And why would that be happening?
Yeah.
So,
or are you chasing people off, right? Or are there things about you that you're, you can improve on, like communication, or are you nice enough? I think I think those are all things that are you abrasive? I think those are all things that impact how someone's performance is beyond them just knowing how to do a good job, right?
If they're afraid to ask you questions, you're not doing your job right.
Yeah. Terrie, how do you approach like someone who isn't doing a great job? Like, what's your method? What's your technique? Or what's the approach to working with that person to improve, or lay out the different options that might be available to them?
Well, first of all, we try to make sure we set expectations, that everybody understands what is expected. Set the metrics. These are the things that you've got to be meeting. And one of the things we do is we do 3 quarterly conversations. I wouldn't call it a review, but like Sue said, you can't wait a whole year to tell somebody if they're doing something wrong. So you monitor that during the month, you have conversations, and then at the end of the quarter, you address them. And again, you don't have to wait till the end of the quarter to do it, but you just address them, and here's what we're seeing that's not happening. You're not meeting these expectations. Is there a problem? Are you not understanding this? Do you need some help? Do you need some more training? So we try to address it as soon as we see it. We try to deal with it, nip it in the bud right away. So they're not, the further you go off on a tangent, the further away you get. So we want to stop that sooner as we can.
I'd say whenever you have any conflict or issues as well, like Terrie said, you have a system in place, but I always train my area managers that to speak and write as if they ever had to be in front of an owner or a judge. So on how, and for counseling forums and that. So obviously you do verbals as applicable, and if the verbal doesn't work, you go into the written notices. But you really want to watch how and what you write in these as well, so you don't say the wrong thing, word it wrong. Always make sure you have somebody else read counseling to see how that sounds to them. Perception is, can be very different for people. And, again, if you were having these verbals and talking to somebody, by the time you get to a written, it's no different than a review. They shouldn't be surprised that a write-up's coming to document. And you just want to have that if you're ever in front of the labor board, a judge for wrongful termination, or the various things that could come up. You've done right by that person by following all your protocols to make sure you gave them the keys to success and they couldn't abide by it.
That's really good information. Yeah.
And something that we've experienced too is having the right people in the right seat. Sometimes you've got the right person, but they're in the wrong seat, and that role is just not for them. And if possible, you move them somewhere else. They fit all the rest of your core values and your company's belief system and so forth. And there's another role to put them in, then you do that. And that's very important to do that.
That's
And
good.
I think a good manager can spot that and can see that, the value in the employee and where they can best fit. That's really good too.
That's
You
cool.
guys are great. And are we
know.
already ready for lightning round?
Very
Like,
funny.
we have stayed on track with this outline for the first time, I think, all year.
All year. I mean, in a long time, we made it to the lightning round.
Yeah.
So, what a great conversation, y'all. Seriously. So if you're a manager in the audience, right? And I know many of you who are, and Diane, thanks for sharing your comments all throughout the session here. I hope whoever owns your facility gives you a performance review, but I imagine you're gonna get 5 stars, knowing what you bring to the table. But yeah, so this has been amazing. So a lightning round. Here's the ground rules. You get 1 tip. That's it. Maybe 15 seconds. So Melissa and I are going to take turns giving you a topic, and you're going to give 1 tip for training new employees on said topic. Are we ready? Ground rules understood?
All right. Topic number 1. Tommy, what is it?
Sales. 1 tip for training new employees in sales.
I'll go. If you use a script, if the person's not comfortable with it, let them find their own comfortable way to make a presentation.
Woo! What a killer tip. Terrie.
Be the expert and help that customer make the right decision for themselves.
Amazing. Melissa, number 2.
All right. Marketing.
Know your audience.
Know your product.
Hey, this is
We are really good at this.
Number 3, maintenance.
Don't ever
Do
work
it.
above your comfort level.
Be preventative.
I like that. Do it. Do it.
Just get it done. Melissa, number 4.
Collections.
Don't ask for it.
Do
Offer a
it.
Solution.
Just do it.
Just do it.
No,
It's a Nike commercial.
So the tip I would say for that is it's like some people are very comfortable doing a sales presentation, but not asking for money. And especially if they know the backstory of the person struggling. So have good protocols of what your collection process is.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's cool. Number 5, conflict resolution.
Show empathy.
Bad cop.
This is so great.
I love it. Last
Love
one,
how,
Melissa.
like, one word answers. Customer service.
Treat others the way you want to be treated.
I like it.
Yeah. Be the best in your area.
Yeah, amazing. Go do it.
So great. So great.
Thank you, y'all. So now we've come to the final question of the week. And this is, what is your favorite success story about your team or a member of your team over the years? I mean, Sue, 35 years in the industry, Terrie, 28 years. I imagine you have countless stories, but give us your favorite success story that you've had or experienced over the last in your career.
I will say, but because I'm still relatively new in this company, and our company is still relatively new, I do have success stories I want to mention. But the one I mentioned earlier, crossing $1 billion in loans at Live Oak Bank, and for the team to do that is just enormous. It's enormous. I mean, it is a crown jewel to me. and a big part of my career. Even though we've had several successes where we are now, and I'm proud as I can be at our company, I think that one kind of stands out for me.
That's awesome.
That's awesome.
For me, same, been a lot of different financial, getting funding, things like that for various owners. But I think my favorite thing is looking back and seeing several of my team that I've had that now run other companies. They grew as site managers up like me. They run another company, or even outside of the industry, or they're now area managers or VPs and things. And they've just stayed in and loved the industry as well, and now have gone and made their own path.
Aren't those the best stories? Like, that's incredible. Yeah, I love seeing how people go on and do amazing things, things that like is way above and beyond what they were even doing when they were on your team. You know, it's like, holy cow, it's so impressive.
I do have one more coming up that I think will be a great success story. You know, I can address. I've had so many calls because I split my time now. A lot of people think I'm retiring, so they're calling me, asking me for my properties, things like that. So not quite yet. Don't put me out to pasture quite yet, but I am mentoring a girl who started as a site manager for me. She's wonderful, a hard worker. She has such good values. She's so good at training with the teams. And so my daughter may come in, but I'm going to be able to hand off probably a piece of my business if I so choose. And that's what she wants, for her to grow and carry it on and grow it more herself and become a career for her, just like it was for me.
That's incredible, man. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Thanks.
And Terrie, I'll say this about your $1 billion scenario. When I met you, I didn't know that Live Oak's self-storage division was brand new. I mean, y'all were running that thing like y'all had been in the industry since the beginning. So I think like that's a testament to the way that you guys put that team together and all the people behind the scenes and in front of the scene. So kudos. I mean, that's definitely something to celebrate, and I mean, that's a crowning moment in anyone's career. So that's very cool.
Wow. Tommy, this has been one of my favorite sessions, I think. This has been
great. I know. So our lovely experts, thank you for gracing the joining us here on the Gabfocus stage. What is the best way for people in the audience to get with you, to learn how to do what you're doing, to grow their careers, to get help, or just to talk storage? Because you all have been, seen so much over the last 3 decades. So Sue, what's the best way for people to get in touch?
I can put in the chat, but you can call my cell. You can email me, or you can go on my website and it'll send me an email. But, I always answer my cell, which is 760-401-0297. And I'm always happy to chat with people, or if you just have a quick question on a scenario, emailing me is best. So if I'm out in the field, then I'm happy to answer quick questions, or, what have we experienced this, or what would we do kind of thing. So
thank you for being so gracious with your time. Terrie, what about you, sir?
The best way is my email address, which I dropped it in the chat because I'm on the phone so much. It's probably easier to email me and let me email you back.
There you go. Perfect. Y'all, thanks for coming out and having a blast. Honestly, yeah, this was a great topic and timely topic. With a lot of people trying to grow their storage businesses and trying to get the most out of it. Like Sue, you mentioned earlier, people aren't renting like they were the last few years. And so now the difference could very well be in execution and operations, right? The last couple of years, you could just build it and they'll come. And now
for sure.
It's a different climate now. So incredible. Well, make sure you join us on Facebook. We have a Facebook group for Gabfocus friends and fans. All the videos in the past sessions, storageplug.com/resources, and check out the podcasts. Wherever you listen to your podcasts, listen to Josh post pop-up episodes all the time, and a lot of lively, great conversations and stories happening there as well. So join us up in next month in September for Understanding Data and Reports. So now that you have
another good one.
That's gonna be a killer one. I mean, you got managers, you got good team, you got good people. Now let's actually get into the data, understand how it all is running. So, y'all, thanks again for coming out, and we'll see y'all in Vegas probably here in the next couple weeks for the SSA conference.